Today, a major deterioration of relations between India and Canada, with diplomats expelled from both sides.
The United Nations says peacekeeping troops are staying put in southern Lebanon as clashes between Israel and Hezbollah escalate. And NASA launches a mission looking for signs of life in the oceans of one of Jupiter's moons.
It's Tuesday, October 15th. This is Reuters World News, bringing you everything you need to know from the front lines in 10 minutes every weekday. I'm Tara Oakes in Liverpool.
And I'm Christopher Walljasper in Chicago.
Canada fully accepts and respects the sovereignty and the territorial integrity of India. We expect India to do the same. In this case, they did not.
Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in Ottawa as the diplomatic row with India deepens. Canada says it's expelled 6 Indian diplomats, including the High Commissioner, linking them to the murder of a Sikh separatist leader there last year and alleging a broader effort to target Indian dissidents in Canada. India says it withdrew the officials it describes as targeted and ordered the expulsion of 6 Canadian diplomats. Christian Kaushik is in New Delhi.
This certainly raised alarm bells in Delhi because it is extremely unusual that a country would name the top diplomat of a friendly nation in an investigation. Canada wanted to question the Indian diplomats and they asked India to waive off their immunity, the diplomatic immunity, which India was not happy about. It has become from what was a freeze in the ties to a potential rupture in the ties at this moment. There will definitely be a severe and adverse impact about how the conversations, whether it's about trade, whether it's about economy, how they'll go forward.
Their work is very important. It's completely unacceptable attacking United Nations troops.
European Union Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell condemning Israel troop attacks on the United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon, or UNIFIL. UNIFIL has around 10,000 peacekeeping troops patrolling what's called the Blue Line, a buffer area on the Israeli-Lebanon border. Our UN Bureau Chief, Michelle Nichols, is following the story. Michelle, this mission has been operating for 45 years. How is UNIFIL responding to military pressure from Israel?
UN peacekeepers do have a mandate to defend themselves if they find themselves in a situation where they are under attack. And the UN spokesperson has said recently that they've shown great restraint over the past week or so. The UN is standing firm and saying that the UN flag is still flying and they will stay and do their job. And the Secretary General said over the weekend that any attacks against peacekeepers may constitute a war crime. So it's a very, very serious matter.
Is the force intended to be a deterrent to prevent the kind of attacks that we're seeing between Israel and Lebanon?
UNIFIL are there to monitor violations. And one thing we heard from the UN peacekeeping chief last week was that some of the attacks by Israeli troops that have targeted UNIFIL peacekeepers, they were focused on taking out cameras, lighting a watchtower, and some UN sources have suggested to Reuters reporters that this could be an attempt to prevent UNIFIL from monitoring some of the things that are happening in southern Lebanon.
The charge that Israel deliberately attacked UNIFIL personnel is completely false.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu rejecting that idea.
Israel repeatedly asked UNIFIL to get out of harm's way.
As the UN expresses concerns over attacks on peacekeepers in the south, in Lebanon's north, an Israeli airstrike has killed at least 21 people, according to health officials. The strike in the Christian-majority town of Aitau hit a house that was rented to displaced families, according to the mayor. And in Israel, millions took shelter from projectiles fired back across the border. North Korea has blown up sections of inter-Korean roads and rail lines on its side of the border. That's according to South Korea's military. No damage was caused on Seoul's side.
California is investigating 5 possible human cases of bird flu among dairy farm workers. Bird flu has spread to 100 dairies in California and 300 nationwide, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
European consumers looking forward to their traditional holiday treats may be in for a shock this year. Butter prices in the region have hit record highs. Kamal Crimmins is here to give us the skinny.
So it's a mix of strong demand and tight supply, Tara. Milk output is down because of low prices and high feed costs. And dairy processors are preferring to use their milk stocks for cheese because it's typically more profitable. Now, the big food companies will already have their butter supplies on hand for Christmas cakes, the puddings and the pies, but this is going to hit small producers and bakers hard.
And chocolate prices have been rocketing too, right?
That's right, Tara. I think the markets are trying to give us a hint.
Wow. So, okay, you've got to take my mind off it, Carmel. What have you got lined up this week on Reuters Econ World podcast?
Well, it's the sort of topic that might trigger some comfort eating, actually. In the aftermath of Hurricane Milton and Helene, I thought I'd look at why insurance companies are pulling out of some US states and what that means for house prices and the economy. That's out tomorrow on the Reuters app, Reuters.com, or wherever you get your podcast.
With just 3 weeks to go until Election Day, both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris were in the must-win state of Pennsylvania last night, holding dueling rallies.
Donald Trump is increasingly unstable and unhinged.
Harris slamming Trump for his threat to deploy the military domestically against, quote, the enemy within the United States.
That he considers anyone who doesn't support him or who will not bend to his will an enemy of our country. He is saying that he would use the military to go after them.
At Trump's town hall in Oaks, Pennsylvania, he restated his claims that he would quickly bring an end to the war in Ukraine.
And Biden has done nothing about it. He hasn't even spoken to Putin in over a year. Know nothing about it. And this is a war that has to end, and we're going to get that war ended.
The candidates are also ramping up their media appearances. Trump will be in Georgia today to tape a Fox News town hall with an all-female audience focusing on women's issues, while Harris has also agreed to a separate interview on the conservative news network for a segment airing Wednesday. And both are eyeing potential interviews with podcaster Joe Rogan, who has a devoted following that numbers in the tens of millions. Many of his listeners are the young men whose votes Harris wants and who are leaning, polls suggest, toward Trump.
And liftoff. Liftoff.
NASA has launched a spacecraft on a mission to examine whether Jupiter's moon Europa has conditions suitable to support life.
Pressures are nominal.
The space agency's Europa Clipper spacecraft, a robotic solar-powered probe, is the largest spacecraft that NASA has ever built for a planetary mission.
Pounds of thrust.
It's due to enter Jupiter's orbit in about 5.5 years after traveling 1.8 billion miles. Will Dunham is our science correspondent. Will, what will the probe be looking for?
Just to step back slightly. So one of the biggest scientific questions for humankind is whether we, sort of the living organisms of Earth, are alone in the universe. Astronomers are busy searching for planets beyond our solar system that could host life, but there are destinations inside the solar system that are seen as promising candidates for having the conditions potentially suitable for life. Jupiter's moon, Europa, is one of those and maybe the most promising. Once they're there, the spacecraft is going to be doing 49 flybys of the moon with 9 scientific instruments. The most important aspect of the moon is a large, global, salty, liquid water ocean. On Earth, it is thought that it was in the oceans that microbial life first appeared. The suspicion is that Europa's ocean may have similar conditions.
Today's recommended read takes us to Indonesia and a story about how the outgoing president, Joko Widodo, has steered his son Gibran to a position of leadership. When his father first entered politics, Gibran Rakabuming Raka steered clear. But in a few days' time, the once reluctant 37-year-old will be inaugurated as Indonesia's vice president. You can read more by clicking on the link to the story in our pod description.
For more on any of the stories from today, check out Reuters.com or the Reuters app. To never miss an episode, subscribe on your favorite podcast player. We'll be back tomorrow with our daily headline show.